Welcome to the Nurturing Faith Study Series webinar. My name is Corey Newman. I am the Executive Director for the Evangelical Lutheran Education Association, the ELEA, and I have two colleagues with me. I will let them introduce themselves and we will move forward. Janelle, I'll pop it over to you.
Awesome. I'm Pastor Janelle Hooper. I serve our church-wide organization as ministry with children, and I also am curating a grant for church-wide, a Lilly grant called Curious Christian Children, where we are reimagining kids in worship. I also have the joy of sitting on the ELEA board, so I'm excited to be with all of you today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ed Kay. I'm an ELCA pastor. I use he, him pronouns, and I serve in the churchwide office alongside Janelle as the Senior Director for Discipleship and Inclusive Communities, which is the team in churchwide that includes our faith formation ministries for children and youth, the youth gathering, and then a number of inclusive ministries like disability ministry, deaf ministry, community organizing, our relationships with our outdoor ministry partners. That's also given me the privilege of being able to work with Corey and Janelle for this project with the ELEA and bringing us to our time together today. So I just want to thank you all for giving the time and space in your day and week. Before coming to Churchwide, I was serving in a congregation that had a preschool, and as we developed these resources around this research, I had that primary audience and experience in my mind. And so, as both Corey and Janelle bring their vast experiences with students and children in schools and education settings, too, that this is going to be a resource that's going to be really helpful for you in your context.
Wonderful. I am so excited that y'all are here. I hope you're in the right place. This is where we're going to talk about nurturing our faith in our communities, meeting the needs of your neighborhood. And so we are going to talk both nationally in regards to what we're finding through research are the needs of communities, and talk about how you can do that locally. So I hope you're in the right place. I do want to give a big thanks to the ELEA that contributed to this, because one of the best ways that we can be locally minded is through our weekday ministries, through our schools and early learning centers connected to our congregations. So really want to thank them for their partnership with the ELCA in this. We're going to look at just one video today. We have several of these on our elcaschools.org website, which we will point you towards. This is the one that goes with the introduction for our research, and it'll give you an overview of what we're talking about today. It's just a short 5-minute video.
The ELCA has made its top priority to be a welcoming church, especially by engaging with new, young, and diverse people in our community. Now, in order to ultimately be this welcoming church, we need to work to deeply understand the people both inside and outside of our congregations. We need to know what people really need, how they feel, what they think, and the ways their experiences have shaped who they are. To this end, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America and the Evangelical Lutheran Education Association have partnered with Barna Group, a Christian research firm, to conduct social research both inside of the ELCA and outside of it within our neighborhoods and communities. Now, as we were planning this work and deciding what we wanted to study, we kept asking ourselves, what do we need to do in order to fulfill that mission and to be a welcoming church, to engage new, young, and diverse people? Well, through our research, we quickly learned one of the keys to accomplishing this goal. We need to support families, understand the realities of their daily life, and authentically connect with them to share the love of God. Our research revealed that this is an area where the ELCA can and needs to improve. About half of ELCA parents under the age of 40 feel their church supports families well. We also asked ELCA rostered leaders to honestly evaluate their churches in this area, and when we did, about the same proportion said this is true of their church. There is lots of room to connect more deeply with the families in our midst. The data we collected in this research makes a strong argument that when an ELCA church supports families well, its people show signs of being healthier overall and having a more rich and impactful faith experience. Get this. These churches are 200% more likely to have ministries that are effectively discipling and growing people. Wow. The church itself, as an organization, tends to be healthier too, typically being more welcoming and hospitable and seeing higher levels of congregant engagement and commitment. For example, congregants in these churches that support families well are 3 times more likely to say their church does a great job making faith relevant to people's daily lives. But what really makes these churches stand out is their intentionality with the next generation. Churches that support families well are 9 times more likely to be very sensitive and attuned to the unique needs of all generations, including young people. It's true. One of the keys to a healthier tomorrow for the ELCA is doing a better job supporting families today. So this reality then begs the question, how can we do this? What do the families inside of our churches need that we aren't giving them? What about those outside of our churches that we're wanting to reach? What about connecting to the LGBTQIA+ community? What do they need? What role does education play, right? What about modern day parenting challenges, child faith formation? How can we do a better job supporting families? Well, these are exactly the right questions to be asking, and we would like to help you answer them. The ELCA, in partnership with the ELEA, has built a curriculum for you designed to answer these questions and help jumpstart your ability and supercharge your passion to support families well. Visit the ELEA website for the full research report, key insights, and resources to engage your church or school. Discover how to share God's love in your community. Let's continue the conversation there.
So that is one of the videos that we have featuring Savannah from Barna Group. She does an excellent job of the videos and helping with the research. So I hope that gives you a taste of the kind of videos that we have available to go along with all of this data. Barna Group is a Christian organization that does all kinds of survey for a variety of denominations across the country. They did extensive work for us, and you can see here on this slide the time frame and how many people, that the most of it was online. They did random sampling that we just aren't capable of doing of here through the ELCA, and so they've got all the tools for that. We did ask for them to target 4 particular groups, and that is adults under 40 who are disconnected from the church, young adults with kids, adults who identify as LGBTQ+IA, and unchurched and dechurched individuals. So that's who we were asking to survey, and they did an amazing job. So we only have a limited time to go over some of that information with you today. And again, the videos and everything else can be found at elcaschools.org. So the goal of the survey that we were asking, we wanted to understand the opinions of young parents in our neighborhoods. Maybe you're like me, I've served a variety of congregations. We sit around with however many staff, whether that's 1 person or 10 or our church councils, and we talk about, gosh, what are people looking for? What would they come to? What times would they come? Like all these questions. And sometimes it feels like a vacuum because we're kind of talking to ourselves. We're not really uh, talking to those exact people, the de-churched, the unchurched, and those communities we just mentioned. So we wanted to, as the ELCA, directly get those opinions. We wanted to know, like, would they participate in religious activities if we offered them? How do we become the kind of new and young adult driven, diverse church that we want to be? How do we do that if we're not in conversation with them? So surveying is one way to do that. How do we improve the inclusion of our queer friends if, you know, perhaps there aren't that many in our church, or we need to be asking a broader audience. So that's this here are the reasons why we were doing that, to explore that on your behalf so we could offer you this information. So again, the group studied, it explains it a little bit here, what we mean by the terms throughout the study. And some of them are self-explanatory, but it's always good when you're doing a survey to just be really clear what we mean by that. So I'll give you just a second to look through that. And again, all of that can be found on our website. So we did this huge survey and we found 3 main themes. It's always nice to distill things from gargantuan to just 3. We want to pass this along to you. Out of this huge survey, we figured out that creating space for people to connect is huge. People want to, and hear that, they want to connect. We didn't necessarily say, do this, that, or whatever, other than connect. And so how that connects will look unique and particular to your local community, that they need to connect. They are looking for growing a more welcoming and inclusive of all. And again, remember the list of kind of people we asked: unchurched, young parents, queer community, are looking for it to be more welcoming and inclusive. So perhaps your church is already on that trend, or maybe you already know that there's room for you to grow. The third thing is balancing quality education and faith formation. How do we do that? How do we balance it? How do we make it good on both ends? How do we prioritize that? That's what our local community is looking for. So those are our major themes. I think we might have something to put in the chat, or maybe Corey already did it.
I did. I put in a question: which theme resonates most with your current ministry situation?
Great. We would love to hear from y'all. Please do that. And so, dun, 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 we want to share with you 4 aspects of the survey. There are many more, but we want to, again, try to make this doable for this presentation. Number 1, the 3 things young parents want most for their children are, maybe you can guess some of them. Let's see. Love and acceptance for who they are. Parents are looking for love and acceptance for who their children are. They want their children to have positive role models in their life, and they want to have access to quality education for their kids. I bet you probably could have guessed at least one of those. This is what families in your community are looking for. Parents under 40 are looking for. Look how strongly they're looking for it, okay? Not just 10 or 15%. So these are huge when you're trying to sit down and think about your programming and your goals. Does your activity find a way to provide love and acceptance? Does it have some kind of mentoring, role modelship engaged in it? And how does it offer any kind of quality education connected with it? All right, those are huge.
Ready?
Ready.
All right.
Number 2. Y'all did good with the first fill in the blank. I know we can do this again. Here we go. Young parents today are most concerned about, this is like that, what is that reveal show where you see if people, what is that one? Can't think of it now. You know what I'm talking about. All
I
right.
wish I had them fade in when they come.
Yes, fade in. That would be extra
Here they
cool.
are.
When you think about issues affecting children today, which of the following are most concerning to parents under 40? Again, I bet you could have guessed at least one of these. School safety, mental health for our kids, social media access for our kids, and gun violence. It's amazing. Those are the top four in this day and age around mental well-being, physical well-being, spiritual well-being, all of these wrapped together. So when we're wondering what parents are worried about for their kids, these are the top four. So your community needs to be addressing these some way, if not all four of them, at least, by at least one, two, or three of them to really connect with what parents are looking for and needing right now. And I'm a mother of a 16 and 14-year-old, so I resonate with all of these very strongly. And I bet if you're a parent of a kid of any age, it's no surprise to you. So it may not be a surprise, but I hope you find it affirming from the data collected. All right, next one.
Yeah, Ed, I noticed that you liked Tammy's comment. Do you want to add anything in the group?
Just to say, I mean, Tammy put in the comments, if you're not paying attention to the comment stream that's there, said we say that our church welcomes all, but we don't have real diversity in our church community. How can we actually welcome all? And I think that's really part of the goal of what we wanted to get at. I think we've learned more and more how important it is to be listening to our neighbor and not assuming that we know who they are or what they need based on past experience or stereotypes or what the media tells us or whatever the thing is. And so research like this and the resource that we developed coming out of it was really meant to be able to develop deep understanding and relationships with our neighbors so that we can better understand how we can serve together, how we can support what the needs are, because that does look different in every context. And so as you're thinking about your own context, some of the numbers that are in this data, and if you're like a really big number person or have folks in your congregation or learning community that are, there's a lot more raw data that we'd love to give you access to if you're that kind of learner. But what Janelle's running through, there's a really good snapshot of the different populations and groups that we ask these questions to. That it may resonate with your community, but regardless, it's really going to help spark conversation and opportunity to really learn more about your neighbor, especially your neighbor that's not currently present.
Yeah.
Because remember, we were serving unchurched, dechurched folk, queer families. So this isn't based on a certain, like, only a certain gender is worried about school safety. This is across the board for ethnicity, and like we said, parents under 40. So if you're looking to invite people in your community into some ministry that you're doing, if you do something on school safety, right there, you should have at least a 50% interest rate in your neighborhood. And so how you do that and do that well and connect locally, but just knowing that these topics, if you're thinking about like, oh, we might want to do something on climate change, that might be great. And we're not saying don't do it, but you might want to do one alongside like how mental health is connected with climate and how being in nature is important, and blending them together would be great so that that you're meeting a need, but also targeting what for sure is an issue for people. So that's why it's helpful to know these numbers. Number 3, there is ample opportunity for ELCA churches to serve the young parents in our neighborhoods, especially with services for their children. Okay, that sounds like, that's why we're here. But let us give you some really good data on why that makes a difference so that you can talk with your congregations and communities with some real numbers behind it. So if a church in your area provided the following services to the community, we are told through this large survey how people would be interested in them. Look at this. 52% of unchurched and LGBTQ plus IA parents would be very interested in a playground. 52%. Fascinating. Corey and I just came back from Denver where we were with a congregation in a school that is doing an amazing playground open to the community. That's nature oriented, that's disability welcoming, all kinds of things. We can only imagine if people are saying 52% are interested in that will definitely be a good connection. Community programming. Again, you can talk about you might already be doing some of this. How could you build on this? Early learning centers for children. Look at that. That's a big number. So for those of you who have an early learning center, wonderful. How can you continue to strengthen that? And for those of you who don't, look at the interest of folks for that. So that might be something that you'd like to consider. Opportunities for parents to meet each other. It's interesting. We're going to talk just briefly. Our study talks about how modern day parenting is hard. And so look at the number of people who just need a way to meet other parents. You think you would, but it doesn't happen all that easily. Information for parents about their services. So people are looking for, what can this church do in the community? How would it make an impact on my life? How could I be connected? And classes on parenting. Look at that. Classes on parenting, because we did find through the study that parenting is hard. I think Corey and I would all just 2 hands up for that. Parenting is hard. So again, if you're trying to offer something for your community, classes on parenting. And our last one, because we're just going to do 4 today, but isn't this insightful? I hope this is all really insightful. It may not be like rocket science, but it's affirming and insightful. Here we learn that church-based early learning centers are a wonderful way to serve both churched and unchurched parents. So we found out that there are aspects of church-based early learning centers that are very appealing to the wide variety of people that we asked. You can look at this, and we mentioned people are looking for safe schools. So here you go, safe Christian environment, connection to a local church, faith-based curriculum. These days we talk about how hard it is for people to make time for faith in their lives. How do you do it on Sunday mornings? Sunday school is going by the wayside. But think about weekday ministries that our schools and early learning centers offer this faith-based curriculum throughout the week. They offer a variety of opportunities for worship and chapel, spiritual development that sometimes we just don't have time for on a Sunday morning to get across to people. So practices for that. They're looking for experienced and dedicated leaders. Again, Corey and I just were at a church where the average teacher had been there at least 8 years. It's amazing, amazing, dedicated and experienced teachers. Obviously, opportunities for religious instruction. So again, hopefully this is something to prayerfully consider and think about what your community might be looking for. And so we'd love to have some feedback on what we've talked about so far.
Yeah, and some of you have been adding in the chat some questions and comments along the way, but it's a lot of information that Janelle just ran through, and so just wanted to pause before we start talking about the resources that are available for you to utilize this data and to engage in conversation in your context. Are there things that are surprising to you that you've noticed in what's been shared? Are there things that like you'd want to learn more about or test that out in your context? Yeah.
So, Rachel, all of the report and findings can be, if I can share that link again, it's up a little bit in the chat. But you'll find all of the research reports down in little drop downs under the video on the top of that page. So you'll find research reports, the qualitative and quantitative reports are in there.
And one thing you'll find there too is something we just finished in the last week, is a video that we've made that both shows the resources and support that the ELEA provides, but also highlights this resource. And you may see it at a Synod Assembly coming to you. We've developed this video as a way to share this resource a little more broadly. And so if you do have any connections to Synod Assemblies, we'd encourage you to help your tech people find it, as we're going to be pushing it out in other spaces as well. I know we have a couple of synodical folk that are here in this space, so any ways that we can help to share this opportunity, especially for places that have schools and learning centers that are a part of the ministry of their church. But this resource really can be for anyone, any congregation that wants to learn more about how they can connect with their neighborhood, especially with younger families. So we're really going to be sharing this widely. Emily, you have a question.
Well, it sounds like the answer might be in the resource, as you just mentioned. But the question really is, especially for congregations who tend to be more aged, older, and not have children or families, what's a good connection point or a good way to get connected to families in the community, since, there's none already there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we are going to get into that in the next piece that's coming, because it's one thing to have all this data, and as a data hog, I enjoy like parsing through and reading all of this, but then to get to okay, so then what do you do with this? Like the intellectual pursuit is noble in and of itself, and also how might I engage with my context leaders, lay folks, our neighbor with this kind of information, or with some of the key findings. If we're learning more about what our neighbor might need, what does that mean for our context? And so that's part of what the resource was developed around, answering and engaging in those questions. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. Any other thoughts or questions about the data or the research or any of that before we do jump into the resource itself?
All right. I'm taking you forward.
All right, let's keep going. Janelle, am I picking up now?
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds great. So we took all of this, and this was about right when I started at the churchwide organization in my job, and said, okay, we have all of this information. What do we do with it? How do we help people engage with it, understand it, have some conversation around it? And so the three of us in particular, but with partners in the organization and in the ELEA, in different schools and congregations and synods, developed this resource. So the Nurturing Faith Study Series. It's an 8-part series, so you'll see 6 sessions that are listed here. Again, all of this is available on the website that Corey shared there in the chat. It's downloadable as a PDF, and we have printed copies that we'd love to get out to you if you'd love one of those too. But there's an intro that kind of introduces you to the resource in a similar way that we did for the first part of our time together. And then there's a closing session to say, as we've gone through some or all of these sessions, what do we do now? How might we like to move forward from the conversations, the discussion, the learning that we've had around a particular space, with engaging this in our context? And so each of these sessions focuses around one of the key findings that came from the research. And were we to be doing this in a space together, we might break up and go through one of those together. But each session follows a very similar format, and can be led by anyone. So each session includes an introduction to the particular finding, reminds us where the whole came from, has an opportunity to frame this in scripture. So there is a Bible study piece that fits each one of these key findings in each one of these sessions. It then goes through an opportunity to discuss and frame this theologically, to pray about the learning to that point and the conversation to that point, and then gets into using a video. Each of these 6 sessions in the center have a support video, again, from our partners at Barna. Savannah leads through the details of that particular key finding, and will take us through that. So there's an opportunity to use that video. And then discussion questions, an opportunity to engage around that particular finding. What's surprising to you? what affirms things maybe you already know. Some of that will depend on the context in which you're using the resource. And we're going to talk a little bit about different ways you could use the resource before we finish to give you some imagination around where in your context and with whom you might engage with this. But every session follows this similar pattern. It can be led by anyone. You don't have to have a master's degree in divinity or education to be able to lead any of this. There are step-by-step ways to engage in this as a leader. It can be shared among the group, but it can be a particular leader depending on where the context where it's being used. It could be a director, it could be a pastor or a deacon, council president, or anybody in a congregation or education setting to engage in this material. The ELEA has also developed some additional resources, and Corey, I'm going to let you share that because you know this resource the best.
Yeah, so the other pieces that we have are a survey strategy template, and I'm gonna pop it into the chat here. And I'm not gonna talk while I do it because there we go. All right, the survey strategy template is simply for you to be able to really process how you're going to get the survey out into your community, because that's what we're trying to do, is really get a better understanding now of our specific community. So rather than looking at all that national data and trying to assume the needs of our community, we're going to be able to use the tools provided by Barna, which we'll get into a little while, and really survey our close community and find out what their needs are to help us better program to meet those needs. All right. So this is, I cannot see a bigger picture. Here we go. The website, the ELEA website, again, that link that you have, if you go down, you'll be able to find all of this information there. So this is a tool provided by Barna. It is a survey that, it is a very similar survey to what they utilize to collect the data that they presented us. And you can use that tool and customize it for your own context, and then send it out to your community in all the different ways that you might send out survey information. And what it allows you to do is just build this survey, collect the data that's specific to your site, and then have discussion around what that data has is showing to you, and then how your team, how your ministry context can utilize that data for programming. There's anything you want to add about the assessments, Janelle? The glue?
Yeah, just that, again, Churchwide is here to do the work alongside you and for you when we can. And so we've offered you this high-level survey of national needs, and this also is now a free resource to look at your contextual needs. It's pre-done. You can customize it. So I think Rachel, who it was, who just asked how would I move through my community and find out their particular needs when we have an older congregation. Well, you get to do the study guide with them, and the study guide includes doing this too, being able to survey your community. So you can send this out through emails to your local school. I mean, whoever connections you have. They don't have to be members of the church, right? And all kinds of ways you can think about surveying your local community in particular.
And then the last thing I'll drop in there is a planning template. And again, this is just a resource we developed to help you move through this process. You don't have to utilize it. You can review it. You can use it. Whatever you feel best doing. It's a Google Doc, so make a copy of it, and then you can edit it to your liking. Helps if I hit send. There we go. So
just to recap, we've gone through a whole bunch. Quick recap. We've We're talking about nationwide research. We've given you concrete data points around that. We have a free and flexible study guide with videos that anyone can lead, and you can use any parts, and you don't have to do the whole thing, whatever works in your context. We also just now mentioned a customizable local survey for you. So that is a lot. If you're still with us, thank you. Because now's the good part. We want to talk about next steps. Ed, take it away.
Yep. So oftentimes when we think about trying something new, or there's often the, okay, well, that can't work here, or I don't know how this would work, or we don't have enough time, or whatever the thing is. Again, we've built this resource in a way that allows flexibility. So Daniel, it's a great question. We're going to answer that question right now. Sorry, Daniel put a comment in the chat about like who will we actually use this with, and that's exactly what we're trying to get folks around spaces like this to try to get at that. When we imagined creating this, really we thought of a variety of contexts and tried to build the resource with enough flexibility so that it could be used in a variety of spaces. As I mentioned at the beginning, before I came to serve in the churchwide organization, I was serving as a congregational pastor in suburban Baltimore at a congregation that had a preschool for 2 to 5 year old kids. That was a half and full day program. I think our max census was about 90 children and a faculty of about 13 people, with a mostly part-time but sort of full-time director, as folks in education know how that often goes. And so I was thinking about that particular context when we were putting this together, and Janelle's bringing all of her experience and context, and Corey's bringing all of hers to think about this, and really thought about spaces where this could be used, for example, as our preschool would often gather for monthly faculty meetings. So what would it look like to use this as an ongoing learning opportunity during a faculty meeting? Maybe in that space, because one of the other resources that the ELCA and ELEA often work on is what is a Lutheran identity within education and learning spaces, where many teachers and directors don't necessarily come from a Lutheran background and don't know what it means to be embracing or embodying a Lutheran identity through their space. And so they may be more or less ready or comfortable with doing the Bible study part. So maybe they're just going to do the content part. Or maybe there's a desire to grow that. Before I left my call, we had just called a new director who was a Lutheran by background and was committed to increasing the Lutheran identity of the school, and developing some more capacity and knowledge with the faculty who by and large were not Lutheran by background. And so I could see them using the Bible study that was developed with Lutheran theological minds, helping to engage in topics that were closely alongside these learnings in the research. So faculty meetings could be one. Our preschool also had a PTA, or some kind of space where there were parents who were supporting what was happening in the classrooms, and they met regularly together. I could see using this in that space as well, where, again, could be the Bible part in addition to the research part, or could just be the research part, a space where that could be utilized. Could also see using this as a church council devotion. Our church council was pretty disconnected from the educational ministry of our preschool, and a way to develop capacity of relationship and knowledge would have been opening, and this is a little bit to Emily's question earlier, of folks that don't have a lot of current experience with what it means to be the parent of younger children in this day and age, or our congregation leadership not having deep relationships with the community that surrounded our school and church. And so this could have been a council resource. This also could have been a Sunday morning Bible study or a Wednesday evening Bible study or something to do during a season like Lent or Advent or Easter, a time when you can run a limited series on a particular topic and invite folks to come together. And my biggest hope would have been a space where you gather folks from both a church community and the school community, and maybe even the surrounding community who aren't connected with either. I mean, that takes deep relationships in all of those places, but as the pastor of the school that had relationship with the church and the school, I could have leveraged the relationship to bring folks together and worked to create a space where we're talking about these particular issues and opportunities with both a mixed group of folks from inside the school and inside the church. And it could be, I mean, there are a variety of other spaces. I mean, maybe as we've been meeting and talking about these, you're starting to conceptualize who and where in your spaces, in your school or learning center, in your church, in your ministry, where is there an opportunity where you can plug in an 8 session series into something that already happens? Most of us have Sunday morning education time. Most of us have opportunities to gather with leadership, whether that's school or church. There are opportunities to be able to pull people together, and we're always looking for resources. I mean, another one could be you could pull this into a series that's in a part of a newsletter. I know as a pastor, I always struggle with what do I put in the pastor's column every month? What would it look like to highlight each of these issues and invite people into a study time together around these topics? So there's a lot of opportunities to be able to utilize this resource. And again, as Janelle highlighted earlier, there may be some topics that maybe just aren't your context. Or maybe you're in a context where talking about LGBTQIA plus inclusion is going to be a barrier to engaging with the content. Because we know that some congregations and places are in that. And not that this can't be the opportunity to engage in that, but each session is built in a way that it builds on the overall context of the research, but doesn't depend on doing all 6 of the content sessions. So you could say, okay, in this particular season, I've got 4 or 5 or 6 weeks and not 8. Great. Do the beginning, do the end, and pick 3 or 4 in the middle that best will meet your context. You can preview all the videos. Everything is free. It's on the website. You can figure out which ones might work best for you. But it's really built with a plug and play. You don't need a lot of resources. You could do it without the videos too if you want to go low tech and just do it without the video. You could do it online and share your screen just like we've been doing today. There's a lot of different ways you could utilize this resource. Janelle or Corey, anything I missed in my impassioned use of this resource that I feel like I just went off on?
I love it. I love the idea of like doing teasers and such through the newsletter. Those data points, I think would be really interesting there. And then you could flush them out in any of those different ways you just mentioned. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for, calling attention to including all of your ministry leaders. I think that's really important to see your school or center ministry leaders participate in this kind of series. And also, I had suggested to a congregation that's already started some implementation, send out those videos as kind of your pre-work, and let people kind of watch those at home. Then you don't have to take that time if you don't have it, or set up the technology, and people can kind of engage in those resources prior to coming and having that discussion.
The one thing I didn't mention, just to also highlight, is if you want to stretch this out and go even deeper into any of these areas, every one of the 6 sessions, or maybe even every session, has a further study opportunity. So you could stretch this out and make this like a semester long or a series you do over the summer. You can stretch this out further than 8 sessions. Or if you want to engage in 2 or 3 sessions more deeply, there are more resources that are available that you can either do as a group or that you can send as homework or additional learning opportunities to supplement the primary session. So we've been chatting for a little while and wanted to leave some space. I'm hoping that Daniel and Emily, we've answered a little bit of the questions that you asked earlier that were centered around the resource, but wanted to make sure before we ran out of time that we left some open time for other questions that folks had. Um, Certainly, you've got some leaders here in our
Right.
organizations that if there's something else you're looking for that's not quite being met here, we're always happy to hear about other ways that we can support you. So if there's something else you're looking for here, we're always happy to receive that. So if anybody would like to raise their hand or unmute and ask a question or put it in the chat, we've got some open space before we close up our time together.
And I'm just going to drop some prompts in, but please, if you have things you want to unmute and ask, please do that while I drop some prompts in the chat.
Awesome.
And as we wait for that, you can see the arrow there that points to the resource page we keep talking about at the elcaschools.org. And then the second link there is elcafaithformation.org, which is a website that I curate around children's ministry in general. So if you're just looking for resources to connect with those young families, please know that that's available too.
I had one person already ask me, but if any of you would like the hard copy of the study guide, please email me at Corey@elcaschools.org and just let me know how many you need, and I will send those off to you. Drop that in here.
Good question, Tammy. Yes, there is a tool, there's a survey that you can use and customize for your local context. Similar to the national one, it uses similar questions, but you can customize it to your own. And that can be found at the elcaschools.org. There's a whole section about it. It's using a resource called Gloo, Gloo. And that
And
also
yep, that information is under the first drop-down tab called Nurturing Faith Communities. You'll find a 5-minute how-to video, the setup guide, and a getting started guide for those assessments. Anything else? Any other resources that people need? Any further support on understanding all of the offerings we've shared?
Yeah, we hope it helps come alongside what you are already doing. As Corey and I have presented this to a variety of churches, we like to say that it's not just one more thing to do, but as you're doing missional work and trying to envision how to deeply listen, how to connect with your community. If you're already doing that work, if you're already asking those questions, this is just more of a formal, organized way to do that. So it's a tool for that. Hopefully, it won't feel like one more thing on top of everything else, but more coming alongside you. And so please know that we're here as a resource. If you have questions beyond today, that's what we do. We're here to come alongside you and help make this series be doable for you. Ed, would you mind sending us off with a blessing? If it or I can do it.
Do you have it in front of you, Janelle?
It's on the speaker notes that I do not have in front of me, but I
Oh.
am happy to do one.
Great.
Receive this blessing. May holy wisdom grant you strength, curiosity, and grace in all of your ministry to nurture God's people. And with a deep breath, we say, let it be so. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.